Given the complicated and fluid international landscape, it is important for China and EU to uphold multilateralism and advance the building of a multipolar world and greater democracy in international relations. This will help contribute to global peace. We also agreed to safeguard free trade and to strengthen the momentum of global recovery. To prevent any stagnation of global economy, China and the EU are two forces for stability and two major economies. We take our strategic communication cooperation as an important agenda, and the two sides sending out a positive signal for multilateralism is a positive contribution to the world. And we want to prove through our actions for free trade that our bilateral cooperation is beneficial to multilateralism and to free trade. Indeed, in the process of globalization, there have emerged this or that kind of problems, but the trend of globalization is moving forward. And of course, in light of new problems and issues, we need to improve the governance system, including the WTO, while upholding the WTO principles and the rules-based order and free trade. We feel it is necessary to improve and reform the WTO. And China and the EU stand ready to have communication and to set up a communication mechanism. Of course, WTO and other multilateral institutions operate on consensus of multiple parties. China-EU cooperation will not replace multilateral cooperation mechanisms, and we will respectively communicate and consult with other parties concerned. In a word, by upholding the multilateral trading system, we want to achieve more open trade and more transparent and inclusive trade for non-discriminative practices, and to improve the sanctity and authority of the WTO. And in our meetings, we reaffirmed our firm support for European integration. We want to see a united and prosperous EU. And we want to have all-dimensional cooperation with the EU and EU countries and sub-regional mechanisms of the EU, and all such cooperation will contribute to prosperity of Europe. We want to see greater development of Europe and more progress in European integration. We also discussed China's cooperation with some European countries. Our cooperation follows international rules and EU laws and regulations, and our cooperation is conducted as for the purpose of contributing a positive energy to EU. And such cooperation will also help with China's efforts to uphold multilateralism. The two presidents and I agreed to enhance China-EU trade and economic cooperation and chart the course for the future growth. We believe that we need to advance the BIT negotiations now that we have exchanged the offers. It marked a new stage of our negotiations. We share the objective of concluding the agreement at an early date. We also agreed to conclude the geographical indicators agreement by October this year, and we believe that it is a piece of good news, in particular for our trade in agricultural goods. And China wants to seek a more balanced trade relations with the EU. China's door of opening up will only open wider to the outside world. Chinese government recently has taken a host of measures, including reducing tariffs and expanding market access. I just paid a visit to Germany and witnessed the signing of an agreement between a big German company and a Chinese one. It will invest 10 billion euro for sole ownership in China. And we also discussed the foreign equity cap by a European company's investment in China. The foreign company concerned will raise its share to 75%. There are many such examples. I won't go into details here. I want to make the point that China will significantly raise its market access, and we will reduce the tariff rates for goods that are needed for Chinese companies and consumers. In particular, recently we abolished tariffs for certain drugs and additional taxation. This will benefit Chinese consumers, but it takes a process for institutional adjustments, but China's determination for greater openness is firm. As for the agricultural goods and effective drugs needed by Chinese people, be it in the chemical sector or automobile sector, or sectors closely related to people's well-being, we will seek greater openness for the purpose of ensuring a better life for the Chinese people. This way we will provide more choices for the consumers, we will make the market more open and transparent, and provide a level playing field. And for foreign companies, European ones included, we will continue to provide a good business environment for them. Let me repeat here that as long as you register in China, you will be treated the same as Chinese companies. And we forbid any forced transfer of intellectual property, and we will deal with IP violations with all seriousness. And for those who violate intellectual property at their will, we will punish them to the full extent of the law, so that they cannot afford to commit such violations. The ministers present here and I will make the promise here. If any foreign company feels that their IPR is seriously violated, please let us know, and we will deal with such cases immediately. While protecting the IPR of foreign companies, we are actually protecting the innovation of Chinese companies, because Chinese companies also need to protect their IPR for their future development. Now let facts speak for themselves. Take investment, for example. We say openness in the investment sector. We need to take facts very seriously, and we need to study the cases very seriously to see how we can further open the market. Like I said, China and EU exchanged offers of investment agreement today, and on intellectual property and other matters, please feel free to let us know if you feel that you are treated unfairly in China. Now, in a word, there is a wide range of areas where China and EU have been cooperating with each other. We will step up people-to-people and cultural exchanges and cooperation on connectivity and on cutting over capacity. We covered a lot of ground during our discussions. We talked about human rights. We believe that on the basis of mutual respect and equality, we will enhance cooperation on human rights. We talked about cybersecurity, and we agreed that China and EU will strengthen communication on this matter. The EU will have better understanding on China's laws and regulations, and China will update its knowledge about EU's latest legislation on cybersecurity, so that in the age of digital economy, we will have better communication to protect personal information, protect IPI, and protect trade secrets. We also discussed international issues. We uphold multilateralism, and we uphold peaceful solutions to disputes and differences. We both are opposed to terrorism, and we will take common response to regional conflicts, and we believe in negotiations and cooperation to properly settle regional issues. In a word, a lot of common ground has been reached, and let me say here, as I shared with my colleagues in the EU, the latest developments of China and Central and Eastern European countries' cooperation. We want to seek mutual benefit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Premier. Now I will give the floor to Mr. President Tusk.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Good morning, dear colleagues. Let me first of all thank you, Premier Li, for your warm welcome here in Beijing. We just finished a fruitful meeting in which we agreed to develop the EU-China strategic partnership further. We discussed foreign and security cooperation and the situation in our respective neighborhoods. We reiterated our support for the peaceful resolution of the North Korean nuclear issue through diplomatic means and for a complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We are also united in our commitment to the continued full and effective implementation of the Iran nuclear deal. And today we will also discuss the political situation in our neighborhood, including the conflict in Ukraine. And I want just to repeat that our position is that the only way to a sustainable solution to the conflict in Ukraine is through the full implementation of the Minsk Agreement. On human rights, it is not always easy to find agreement as differences persist, but we agreed to enhance exchanges in follow-up to the recent human rights dialogue. Now let me repeat what I told Prime Minister Li at our meeting a bit earlier. Today, on the same day as Europe meets China in Beijing, American President Trump and Russian President Putin will talk in Helsinki. We are all aware of the fact that the architecture of the world is changing before our very eyes. And it is our common responsibility to make it a change for the better. Let us remember here in Beijing and over there in Helsinki that the world we were building for decades, sometimes through disputes, has brought about peace for Europe, the development of China, and the end of the Cold War between the East and the West. It is a common duty of Europe and China, America and Russia, not to destroy this order, but to improve it. Not to start trade wars, which turned into hot conflict so often in our history, but to bravely and responsibly reform the rules-based international order. This is why I am calling on our Chinese hosts, but also on President Trump and Putin, to jointly start this process from a reform of the WTO. There is still time to prevent conflict and chaos. Today we are facing a dilemma. Whether to play a tough game such as tariff wars and conflicts in places like Ukraine and Syria, or to look for common solutions based on fair rules. This is why responsibility, predictability, spirit of cooperation, and respect for our common rules and commitments are so important these days. The EU is committed to working towards the modernization of the WTO and calls on all partners to contribute positively to this goal. We propose a comprehensive approach to improving, together with like-minded partners, the functioning of the WTO in crucial areas. We need new rules in the field of industrial subsidies, intellectual property and forced technology transfers, reduction of trade costs, as well as a new approach to development and more effective dispute settlement. The aim of this reform should be to strengthen the WTO as an institution and to ensure a level playing field. Thank you.
谢谢图斯克主席。下面请容克主席讲话。
Now I would like to give the floor to President Juncker.
Prime Minister, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be back in Beijing for this 20th China-EU summit. I first visited China back in 1996 as Prime Minister of Luxembourg, and it's always a pleasure to come back and to see China grow and transform into a truly global country. I've always been a strong believer in the potential of the EU-China partnership, and in today's world that partnership is more important than ever before. Our cooperation simply makes sense. Together we account for around a third of the global economy. Europe is China's largest trading partner, and China is Europe's second largest trading partner. The trade in goods between us is worth over 1.5 billion euro every single day. Last year alone, Europe exported 198 billion euros worth of goods and 38 billion euro in services to China. This creates jobs and growth on both sides and shows the potential of our trading partnership. But you also know that we can do much more. European foreign direct investment into China have hit a low in 2017 at around 6 billion euros. This compares to over 30 billion euros invested by China in Europe last year. This gap reflects a concern amongst our investors on the regulatory and administrative burden that foreign companies sometimes have to face in China. Europe wants to do more and to invest more in China on the basis of a level playing field and have agreed rules. But an open investment environment works when it's two-way. In that spirit, I welcome the further exchange of offers that we have made on the comprehensive agreement on investment. This is an important step, but only the first one. What we need is an agreement that fulfills our common ambition and gives investors on both sides predictable and long-term access to our respective market. Évidemment, nous pensons en Europe que la Chine doit s'ouvrir davantage. Et l'exemple que le Premier ministre vient de donner,
the example that the Prime Minister has just given, referring to large investment by a German company, this is without any restrictions. This is a very important development. It shows that if China wishes to open up, it can do so. It knows how to open up. That is why I very much welcome the fact that both sides, China and us, have agreed to put in place a working group on reforming the World Trade Organization. It's not just a matter of setting up a working group, but we have to show that actions are more important than words.
All right, that was the joint press conference given by Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, along with the European Council President Donald Tusk and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. The three are co-hosting the Chinese and the 20th China-EU summit, which is happening today in Beijing. Well, Li Keqiang, in his speech, said the China-EU should safeguard free trade, fight against protectionism, and the summit will also be an opportunity to show that bilateral cooperation is important not only for China and Europe, but also for the development of the whole world as well. He also stressed it is important to uphold WTO rules for a healthy multilateral trade pattern. And he also promised that China will further open market access. And Donald Tusk and Jean-Claude Juncker also stressed that China-EU relations are never stronger than now, and big cooperation potential is still lying ahead. They are very optimistic about bilateral relations indeed. Now, for more about the China-EU relations and on the 20th China-EU summit, in Beijing, we're now joined in the studio by Ms. Jin Ling. She's an Associate Research Fellow from the China Institute of International Studies. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Jin. Well, the 20th China-EU summit is kicking off in Beijing, and we've just heard the speeches by the three leaders. First of all, what do you think of bilateral relations after? Because this is the 15th year of comprehensive strategic partnership between the two sides. How would you evaluate the overall relationship between the two sides?
Actually, today, when we talk about the strategic partnership between China and the EU, I think it really comes at very critical times. In 2003, when the two sides established the strategic partnerships, I think at that time both sides have expected the great importance of the bilateral relations. But it's from my own observation, it's a great pity. And then after the debt crisis happened and we see the EU has been riddled with different crises, the strategic content between China and EU has been reflected not so visible. But today it's so different when we are considering the multilateral international order are under the threat from the unilateral behavior from the Trump administration that explains the high stakes, the cooperation between China and the EU for the global implications. Right. Listening to the news press held with leaders from two sides, we could see the cooperations will be mainly focused on the following areas: the multilateral trade system, and also to cooperate of the two sides to fight against the unilateral behaviors, especially the U.S. sides to use the way of threatening to achieve its own purposes. And from this point of view, we see that in the future, the strategic relations between China and EU will have more and more, important implications for the world. For example, trade system, peaceful solution to the hotspot issues, and also climate change deals, etc., etc.
Cooperation apparently is a very important factor between the two sides, and that's why this mechanism has been established and has been going on for so many years. But differences are also there between the two sides as well, and only differences are bridged. Can cooperation go on smoothly? Indeed, what are the major differences between the two sides and how to bridge them?
Actually, Premier Li, in his statement, has addressed the concerns from EU sides. For example, he reconfirmed our ambition to further opening up, and he also stressed the importance to protect the IPR, and also he stressed again and again that the regional cooperation between China and the CEC's country contributes to the healthy China-EU relations. All these, the Premier Li stressed, are the concerns, all the different points today between China and the EU. Of course, China has its own concerns about the market economy status. So all of these have been, I think, very well addressed from this summit.
Right.
So I still remember Premier Li stressed the importance of strategic communications between the two sides. So today, I think they have had a kind of, for me, a kind of roadmap to, enhance the strategic relations. For example, because of different reasons, in the past 2 years summit, we didn't have the joint statements. I think this time we will have a joint statements to further advocate for the support of multilateralism orders. And also, I think they have set up very specific corporations, pragmatic corporations, to promote the multilateralism. For example, they have a promise to further cooperate on the Iranian nuclear deal. They will have a kind of action plan for the climate change deal, etc., etc.
China is actually EU's second largest trade partner after the US, which means the US is quite much depending on the US in terms of trade. So, although the two sides are facing common challenges, the protectionism and Donald Trump's unpredictability and uncertainty indeed, how united can the two sides be? Or say, how united can EU and China be to fight against the common challenges?
As I've said before, first, from the political level, they would like to have a kind of joint statement to fight the unilateralism. As we know, China's policy never, against the third party. We, China-EU cooperation, is to fight against the unilateralism in the world. And second, China-EU as the biggest and the second biggest economic power and entity in the world, their, cooperations, with very practical steps to support the free trade, that is a very important step to, contain the unilateralism. And also, I noticed this time the Transportation Commissioner and the Trade Investment Commissioner accompanied the Tusk and Juncker come to China. So I could imagine they will have kind of consultations on the cooperation under the BRI. That will also a very pragmatic steps to support the open and the free trade system and the investment cooperation.
Right, and at the end of the day, everybody wants to see the money indeed from each side to get prosperous get prosperous together. So yeah, BRI might be the best solution to achieve that. Thank you very much, Professor Jin Ling, an Associate Research Fellow from the China Institute of International Studies. Thank you very much for your insight. China's State Council Information Office has held a press conference on economic data for the first half of 2018. National Bureau of Statistics spokesperson Mao Shengyong briefed the media. Let's take a listen.
According to preliminary numbers, the GDP of China was 41.8961 trillion yuan in the first half, year-on-year increase of 6.8% at comparable prices.